Alright, found this on the InfoWars. Mainstream media targets Slovakia for cutting taxpayer funding to LGBTQIAAP2S+. Wow, that's a mouthful. Maybe it's just me, but every time I see that, it just seems to get longer and longer and longer. Anyway, let's get into it. A decade ago, on a tour through Europe, a local guide in Belgrade stopped to ask me a question. Why, he asked, was the European Union, the West, so bent on getting nations like his to accept LGBT ideology? Why were promises of economic aid always tied to demands that recipients host pride parades or similar initiatives? We do not want this, he said, with irritation, shaking his head. Well, LGBT is really divisive. For example, you're either an ally or you're not. It's no longer we're all members of this nation. It's if you're not pro-LGBT, you're an enemy. In my opinion, anyway. He is not alone, despite the fact that many aspects of the LGBT agenda, especially the transgender agenda, are scarcely a decade old. Yeah. I never heard about transgenderism a decade ago. Like, it's less than a decade old, in my opinion. The progressive establishments of Europe, including the EU and much of the mainstream agenda, are relentless in their attempts to enshrine the LGBT agenda as central to the new European identity. In other words, out with the old, in with the new. What is the new? A globalist agenda. And in my opinion, that's what the globalists like, the LGBT. They're able to tell who's woke and who's not. If you're not pro-LGBT, you're not woke. Nations that attempt to blunt the cultural influence of this movement face the wrath of these elites, as Hungary has discovered over the past several years. Even asking to shield children from these influences fought with fanatic zeal. And here's a video example of that.
But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct.
So the people who made that theatrical clip that I just showed, they said it was just a parody or it was just a joke. If it was a joke, it was in poor taste. So I'm 50-50 on that, to be honest. Anyway, continuing with the article. A similar cultural war has been brewing this year in Slovakia, and the mainstream press is out in full force to shape the public narrative. Yeah, because they're owned by the global elite. The focus of this battle is Culture Minister Martina Simkanova, the 53-year-old TV anchor who took office in October 2024 and has proclaimed herself a defender of Slovak culture. Good. Stating that she opposes LGBT ideology, Le Monde recently reported she has dismissed several heads of public institutions, including the director of the Slovak National Theatre, Maciej Derek, and the director of Slovak National Gallery, Alexandra Kusa, on the spot. Simkanova stated that both were engaged in progressive liberal political activism that was out of line with the government's cultural program. So if it's out of line with the government's cultural program, then yeah, they should be fired. And promised that Slovak government will not give a cent to LGBT groups. Yeah, they shouldn't. It should be spent on the nation as a whole, not one individual group. She subsequently removed a number of government subsidies that were flowing to LGBT organizations. Good. It is important to note that the government is establishing that they do not see LGBT ideology as part of Slovak culture, and that, as such, groups who push this ideology are not entitled to public, that is to say, taxpayer dollars. Damn right. Taxpayer dollars should be going to things like infrastructure, healthcare, education, not one specific group so that they can push their ideology, mainly on the youth. So it says in this part of the article that the press presents those who oppose LGBT ideology as enemies of democracy. Yeah. While portraying those who support it as its defenders. Yeah, if you're not pro LGBT, then you're an enemy, basically. Indeed, the opposition attempted to have the culture minister thrown out in a vote but failed. Simkanova, for her part, accurately pointed out to the press that LGBT activists are free to produce whatever they like, they just aren't entitled to public funding. Yeah, what's wrong with that? But for many LGBT activists, of course, this isn't enough. And it's also probably has something to do with the fact that she fired two people who were spreading liberal activism. Now, I'm going to do a what if. What if there was a conservative guy in Canada who was using government funds to spread conservative ideology, like boys are naturally attracted to girls, girls are naturally attracted to boys? Would he be fired? I'm 90% sure he'd be fired. So wrapping this video up, I'm old enough to remember when the LGBT community was saying all we want is the right to get married. And now they want the government to pay for LGBT programs. So much for just wanting the right to get married. Well, anyway, take care out there in clown world.